Okay, let's continue. I think network is a bit. Shaky now. So we want to talk about the DOM when it concerns the browser. Now, this part of JavaScript doesn't really concern you too much. Reason being, you're not going to be doing this, but it is good that you have an idea of this. So I'm not going to go deeper into it, but half part of it is where you really need to understand, because that's where the APIs comes in, where you transition into the back end. So where the API and the endpoint comes in, but good to know it. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is DOM. What is DOM? DOM is the document object module, the DOM, document object module. So I will put H1 here and I'll call it DOM. If I come to my browser, you see it here and it's showing as DOM, and that is called a document object module. Now, the first time you start this HTML, you notice that the name is called document. So that means the DOM is actually referring to the HTML here. The document here is the HTML. The object module is the arrangement of the HTML tags and the manipulations with the HTML using JavaScript. So when you say DOM, it refers to how you interact with your HTML tags, how you manipulate them, change them, whatever you do to them, how you arrange them, and all of that. That's what we're referring to as the DOM. Yes. So, and everything here, we can interact with them using JavaScript. We can interact with the whole HTML tags using JavaScript, which is what we want to do now. The first thing I want to do is this one, H1. So if I come here and say I want to give this HTML an ID name, so I'll say ID. I'll call it what do I call it? Topic. Let me call it topic as the ID name. And then I come here and say const. You know what? If I want to select it, there are so many ways to select it. It's called selectors. So there are single selectors. Single selectors are if you want to select one element. And then there are multiple selectors. Multiple selectors if you want to select more than one element. So if I want to select one element, I'll say get element. I don't know why I'm not getting. I don't know why I'm not getting IntelliSense. Okay, because I need to start with the document. And the reason why I wasn't getting IntelliSense is because I need to start. The first thing is, why are you using ustrict? Is it always safe in our JS files? I think you are referring to JavaScript on the front end, JavaScript with the reason why we're actually doing all of this, Bisola, is not because we are front-end developers. We're trying to transition into front end, into back end from the front end. So ustrict is used for so many scenarios on the front end, which of course you will have no need for them as a back end developer. You have absolutely no need for them. Document.getElement by ID. So here I am trying to select an element from the document, and I told you before, the document here refers to this HTML because that, of course, the name starts with document and the whole HTML is the document. So if you select it, if you call it document and you call the get element by ID on it, that means you want to select an element that is inside that HTML file, and you want to write the name or the ID name here. For example, this topic, this is the ID name. So I will copy this topic and I'll put it here as the ID name. So this means that I have succeeded in selecting this H1. But how do I know that I've actually selected this H1? I will need to store it in a variable const JJ. I'm used to this short word. So what is stored here now is that H1. And to confirm that that is true, I will console log it JJ and save. If I come here, you see that in my console, I can then see that H1. And this is how to select a single element by the ID. A single element by the ID. So, but there are other selectors that come with ES6. Other selectors. Another one is, for example, let's say I want to, you know what, let me just duplicate this. So document dot query selector. Now query selector is a single selector, but the difference between query selector and the get element by ID is this. Now this one, you already know that you are selecting it by the ID name. You already know that. So, but this query selector, you need to tell it whether this name is an ID name or is a class name. So if this is an ID name, you need to put hash here. But if it's a class name, you put dot. So that's the difference between query selector and get element by ID. Get element by ID, you are selecting an element with the name, with the ID name you know already. But query selector, you need to tell the browser whether this is an ID name or is a class name. So, but this is an ID name, so I will put hash. If I save it this time, it is still showing up on my browser. It's still showing up here. So these two are the two types of single selectors. Now there are multiple selectors. Multiple selectors for when you want to select more than one element. For example, I have YY equal to document dot get elements. So this one is elements. You see the X here tells you that it is more than one. So you can select by the class name. You can select it by the name. You can select it by the tag name. And you can select by tag name NS. So these are multiple selectors. For example, I'll pick this one and I'll put here H1. So this is going to select all the H1. So long as there are H1s, it will select all of them. So if I save this, now it's showing me a collection of H1. So an array of H1, even though it's just one H1 that is inside, but because this is going to select multiple, that is why it is coming as an array, because an array is a variable that holds multiple values. So this is a multiple selector. Now another multiple selector is the query selector all. So I'll say document dot query selector all. Now this all here, you need to select all of them if they have the same class name, or you are selecting all of them if they have the same ID name, or maybe by their tag name, all of them have the same tag name. So you just specify how you want to select them, but you must tell whether that is a class name or whether that is an ID name, or if that is a tag name, you can leave it like that. So you can select multiple elements with query selector all, or with tag name, or with class name, and so on and so forth. So that's the first part of this selector, selecting an element from the document. So I will comment these out and then move to something else, which is so let's say we want to manipulate something. I will close this one. We already have this here as a DOM. Yeah, let me check that. Yeah. Okay, yes, I am recording. So let's say we have DOM here and I want to select it by query selector. So I will use query selector to select it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use the ID. You can. So what I know is I'll change the name to heading. That's the heading. And then I want to do some things, like I want to manipulate it. The first thing I want to do is to change the text content. So I can say heading dot text content. I'll set it to something else and save it. So you see now that even though in the HTML, what is there is DOM, but with the JavaScript and DOM manipulation, I've been able to change it to something else. So that is DOM manipulation. So you can change the content of any tag. You can change the content of any tag. You just need to select that tag and then call textContent on that tag. Assign it to something different and it will change. So that is textContent. Now I can do this again, maybe with H1, but change the topic to, let's use TT. I am out of names, TT. So here I will select that one again and I'll call it heading 2. But it's an ID name that is called TT and save it. So if I come back here, I confirm that this TT is an ID name and then come to the JavaScript, be sure that I've selected it. Now, another way to manipulate the content is to change the inner text. So I can come here and say heading 2 dot inner text is equal to, let's say, whose person's name are we using? Fit2. Save that. So you see now that the inner text has changed. So another way to manipulate the content or the title or the text inside the tag is either with textContent or inner text. That will change what's inside there. Now you can do something else. You can say, you know what, I want to create a div here dot container. I have an empty div, but this div, what I want to do is I want to insert new HTML inside it. I'll call it div. So this div now, I want to insert new HTML inside it. So I can say div dot inner HTML is equal to backticks. Now I can insert any tag I want. Let's say I want to insert li, and here I will say welcome home, anyone, and save it. So see that I've been able to insert something into this div from here. And if you want to confirm this, you can open this to inspect. So if you go to the body tag, open it up, you see these tags here. Now on the browser, they've changed to something else, but in our HTML, they are something else. But on the browser, they've changed. Now you see the container here. Inside the container, now we have an li inside the container. Whereas in our HTML, there is nothing inside it. So this is an example of how to manipulate tags using JavaScript. Do we have any question? Any question on that? Any questions? This one, everybody's silent. Can you drop a thumbs up if you can hear me? Drop a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, thank you. So In the absence of any question, we can proceed. All right, let's proceed. Now, the next thing is CSS in JavaScript. Now, we can write CSS in JavaScript, meaning you can add colors, you can add font width, you can add font size, font family, all the CSS that you can actually do with CSS, you can also do them with JavaScript. So that is what we want to do now. For example, we'll take this first one, which is the topic, the heading. So I can come here and write CSS in JavaScript. Sorry for that. So I can take this heading, that's the variable that is storing. Well, wisdom, for now, there is no point going back because you actually changed it already. But you can change it back to something else using a function. You can change it back to another thing using a function, and we're coming back, we're coming to that part. So here I can say something like, or I can do something like call the heading dot style. I'll call style on it, style dot color, and set the color to be red and save it. Now you see that the color has actually changed to red. So if you want to apply CSS to anything, all you need to do is, I can actually do something else and say, let me do this so that before I explain, background. I don't know why I'm not getting IntelliSense, but I'm supposed to. Background color will be blue. Now, in JavaScript, we use camel casing for everything. If it was in CSS, this is supposed to be something like this, but this is not allowed in JavaScript, so it has to be camel casing. So if I save this, you see now it has color and it also has background color. So you can apply CSS in JavaScript. The next thing I want to do is I might want to increase the font size. The font size, I might do something like, you know what? Let's do 50 px. Now it is bigger. 50 px might be easy, but 100, and now it is very big. So we can do CSS in JavaScript. Another CSS I want to do might be, which other CSS? I think these are pretty straightforward. So this is CSS. You can apply now, but most cases, you will not have the need to write your full CSS inside JavaScript. Now, if you're going to be a front-end developer, you might want to use this CSS, for example, in a scenario where somebody is trying to perform a transaction. If the transaction goes through, then you show them a text content of success with a background color of green. But if the transaction fails, you can use something like text content of failed and then a background color of red to show them that the transaction failed. So this JavaScript is used in those scenarios where you are tying it to a condition using either if statement or ternary operator, depending on what happened. So if the transaction is successful, you want to set the text content of this and set the background color of this. But if the transaction fails, you want to set the text content of failed and the background color of red. So that is the case where you might want to do CSS in JavaScript, but you will not be doing the whole website with JavaScript. So it's advisable to keep CSS in CSS file and then keep JavaScript in JavaScript file. But in those scenarios where you might be doing conditional rendering, checking for certain conditions before you do certain things, you can do those things in JavaScript. So do we have any question on this so far? Any question? Any question? If there is no question, you drop a thumbs up so that I know to continue and we'll be done. Any question? If there's no question, you drop a thumbs up so that I can continue. Okay, you people are dropping thumbs up. That means you understand what we're talking about. All right, okay. Now let's move on to something else. Talk about events. Events. All right. Events. Now, I'll remove these ones. You know what? I'll remove these two and save it. Then I'll put a button here. I'll call it click me and save. So I have a button here. Steven, I don't know what you mean you are trying to make it show. Now, if it's not showing, it means that you've not been able to select that element properly. If the element is not showing on the console, you've not been able to select it properly. But what we are doing is not showing on the console. It's actually showing on the main page, not on the console. It's actually showing on the main page. So you need to check if you are using query selector, make sure you're indicating the right name and also giving a good variable name like that. It will show on your main page. So what is or what are events? Events, so many events occurs on a website. But for example, I want to do an event that if I click this thing, maybe the color of this text to change. Or if I click here, let this thing change to another text. So you perform certain actions or certain tasks based on the behavior of your users on the website. So if users click on a button, you want to do something. So that is an event. You perform a task based on what the user, or maybe responding to the user's actions or interactions. For example, I have a button here. I'll give that button a name or maybe a class name. I'll call it BTN. So I will save that. I will come here. First, I have this topic. So what will I do? I have this topic selected here already. So I have this topic selected here. I want to, okay, you know what? We already have it here. So we have the heading here already. Do I need to select it again? You know what? Let me just, I don't want to, but let me just select it again so that they'll both be on the same page. So I have this thing here and it's going to be called heading. I'll put another name, otherwise I will get errors. So I'll save this. The next thing is I want to select the button. So the button has a class name of .btn, and here I will call it button. It's called button. Now what I want to do is if you click on this button, I want the color of this text to change, or maybe I want the text entirely to change. That's a different thing depending on what you want. So what I want to do is say, I'll call the button dot add event listener. So I am adding an event listener on the button. So this event listener will listen to an event on the button. And there can be so many events on the button. The users can actually click on the button. They can hover over the button. Mouse can come in and come out. So many things can happen with the button. They can actually be holding the option key while they click the button. They can be holding the control key while they click the button. So there can be so many events. We want to listen for a click event. And when that happens, we want to run a function here. So this is how to add an event. Add an event, the first one is you select the variable you want to add that event to, you add the event to that variable, and you add the type of event you are listening for. We are listening for a click, and then when that button is clicked, you want to run a function. Now, we want to use arrow function here. I want to, not we, because run, that's the name of my function. So I'll put an arrow function. The reason why I am putting an arrow function is because I like using arrow functions. And the reason why I'm defining the arrow function above is because you can't call an arrow function until it has been defined. So I'll call it, and I'll change the name of that function to run event here. So what I want to do is to put a console log here to see whether this button is actually going to console log something for me. Because here I'm asking it to console log first whenever I click on this button. So I want to check if it is going to console log. It says cannot set properties of null of innerText. Okay, innerText heading 2. Where's heading 2? And this one too should be gone. Yeah, save that. So if I click here, I get it console logging first. So it's actually console logging first for every time I click. And I want to know why this button has a color of green. I'll comment these ones out. So here, so the button is actually working. So what I want to do is inside this function, I want to call the heading and say heading dot style. I'll set it to heading dot style dot color is equal to maybe red, and save it. So if I click on this button, it should change to red, but it is not changing. Why? Because I'm calling heading 2 instead of this heading. Sorry. Yeah. So save it now and try again. Now it is changing to red. So this is an example of how we can actually use events to do something. Now it does just the color. You can do so many things here. Like for example, set the background color to. Background color can be equal to blue, and save it. So when you click this button, it's actually not changing to, oh my god, I didn't spell the color very well. So I'll click here, and it's not changing to blue because I didn't spell the background very well. Sorry. That was because I'm not getting intelligence. So now it's working. So the idea here is that you select the button, you add an event to it, you put the type of event you want to listen to, and you add a function that will run. So it is inside that function you define what you want to do. I know we talked about functions today, and I told you functions are like robots. Whenever you call the name of that function, it will come and do exactly what you have designed it to do. So this function here has been designed to change the color of the heading to red and also change the background color to blue. So you can add as many functions as you want. Now, to each of those functions, you can add so many instructions or details or things you want to do inside a particular function. So this is what we do with events. Now, even though you may not be doing a lot with events, but for the time being, it's very good you understand what events are for and why we use events. So any question so far? Any question? No question. Are you kidding me? Okay, that's fine. That's great. Why does the event listener come before the function? Wisdom, I don't understand the question, but if you mean this event listener, why it comes before the function, or why the function comes before the event listener, I really don't understand the question. But in adding an event listener, this is how you add an event listener. You call the variable or the tag, then you add an event listener to that tag. Inside the bracket of the event listener, you indicate two things. The first one is the type of event All right. Welcome back. I think MTN is deciding to show themselves. Yeah, network jam. Actually, wisdom, it doesn't really matter where you place the event in the code, depending on the function you are using. If you are using an arrow function, it means that the function must come first before the event. But if you are using a normal EX5 function, then you can add it anywhere. But that's like, I will encourage you to use arrow functions because of it avoids hoisting. So we don't have much to cover from this 1 hour, but we are going there. We're getting there. Now let's put all of these things together. Let's put all of these things we've learned now, all of them. Okay, somebody was asking, what if you want to change the text, the entire text? You can do that. You can do that. All you need to do is come here and call, maybe if you want to use textContent or innerText, anyone, textContent, you can change it to something like welcome to Nigeria. Welcome to Nigeria. Okay, let me share my screen. I think all right. So what you are asking is, what if we want to change the whole text? So I am saying that all you need to do is call that variable you selected and call textContent on it, and then set the text you want to change it to when this event runs. So if I save that and come back here, I have it as something, and if I click now, it changes to welcome to Nigeria, like that. And I told you, which is going to actually be your assignment, is you're going to add an event for when the transaction is successful and when transaction has failed. That is just one assignment. There are other assignments. So when transaction is successful and when transaction fails. So you should be able to display success and display a green background inside the success. Maybe change it. Let me see if I can do something like I don't have a div, but that's fine. That's fine. So let's put all of these things together and do something big. Not big, but something a little big. Say we have an array const. I will call it array of, it can be array of fruits or anything, is equal to an array, and this is going to be mango, orange, what other one, apple, and which last one will I use now? Pineapple. No, let's use pineapple. All right, so we have an array of fruits. What we want to do is to display a list. don't worry about the spelling. It shouldn't bother you. So long as you know that you can actually put something correct there. What matters is the string. We're just looking at the strings, not the actual spellings. So we want to output all of these things in the browser to show them here. So what we want to do is, first, I want to come here and create a UL and call it list. So it has a class name of list. So I want to use this class name and put li's inside them. I want to put li inside it. So here I will then select const ul is equal to document dot query selector and then pass in the name. I think the class name list. So this list that is the UL in our HTML. I want to insert li's inside here, and the content of the li's will be the items in this array. That's what I want to do. So how would I do that? So I will call the array. Sorry, what did I type? Array of fruits dot for each. For each item in the array, for each item in the array, I want to call it each. I've been using each for a while now. So what do I want to do for each of them? I want to call the UL and insert, I'll say UL dot inner HTML. Insert an inner HTML. Inside the inner HTML, I want to use li's. So this is not HTML. That's why I'm not getting IntelliSense, HTML IntelliSense. So I want to insert each here, right? Yeah. So what I'm simply doing is this. I have an array of lists, and I want to insert those lists inside the UL here, but using li's. So what I would then do is call the UL, insert inner HTML. For each of them, I'll take each one, insert it inside an li, and put it inside here. I take the next one, insert inside an li, and put it inside this UL. Take the next one, insert it inside an li, and put it inside the UL. So if I save this, I should see, I'm only seeing pineapple, and that is because of why. Okay, I am going for each. That is because I need to do plus equals. Yeah, by tagging on to it. See, one small thing that you forget. All right, so I have all of them being added. That is what this plus equals is doing. All of them being added to this UL, and which is why you see them as a list here. And if I add another thing to this list, it will appear on the list automatically. And next one might be watermelon. So this is an example of how, now, majority of the times, this array will be coming from your back end. You will be the one arranging the data that the front end developer will take and display on the front end. And you can actually arrange it as an array of strings, array of objects, or array of anything you want. You'll be the one to decide. But most times, the developer will be the one to display them on the browser. So do we have any question on this? I feel like we're actually done with this, but ask your question if you have any. No question. Are you kidding me right now? All right. if we want us to move on, please drop a thumbs up so that we can move on to something else. Drop a thumbs up so we can move on to something else. All right. So now we want to talk about how the front end communicates to back end. Now we're done with front end. We want to see how front end communicates with a back end. Now there is a dummy site called JSON placeholder. I think so. Or let me call it type code. Type code JSON placeholder. So this is a website. It's actually a back end that has been built. You can use it to test anything you want. So what we want to do is to fetch data that is on another back end and bring it into our website. The HTML screen, there is nothing inside, just this and this. So I can demo that by bringing this one here. I know I'll remove these two because we don't need them. Yeah, so this is the HTML. So what we want to do is make a request to a backend, another backend, and then get the data that backend is sending to us so that we see how the data from a backend looks like before we can move on to building our own data. So how do we do that? I want to use this JSON placeholder to do that. Now, when you want to make a request to a backend, you need to understand the different type of requests. There is a GET request, there is a POST request, there is a PUT request, there is a patch request, and a delete request. What is the difference between these two types of requests? If you want the backend or the backend to send you data, any request that is made to the backend asking the backend to send you data is called a GET request. So whenever you want the backend to send you the names of students, to send you the name of somebody, to send you the age of somebody, to send you any data at all, whether it's image or anything, you need to make a GET request. So a GET request is a type of request that you are asking data or asking information from the backend. That is a GET request. Now, the second one is a POST request. A POST request is any request that is made to the backend. Now you are sending data to the backend to save it for you. That is a POST request. Any request that is made with information to the backend, requesting that the backend should save the information, that is a POST request. So you're asking the backend to take this user's information and save it for you. The screen is not on display. Are you serious? My screen is actually on display. The screen is actually on display. Anybody having the same issues? You can't see my screen. All right, thank you. So a POST request is, for example, registration. If you have users making registration, that is a POST request. Log in is a POST request. Filling out a form is a POST request, because you are taking the user's information and you are sending it to the backend and you're asking the backend to save it for you. Now, a PUT request, on the other hand, a PUT request and a patch request are almost the same thing. A PUT request and a patch request are almost the same thing. Let's say, for example, you have your details already, like some persons do, their NIN, they have already created or filled out the form for NIN, but their name is not correct. One of their names is not correct, or maybe their date of birth is not correct, or maybe their location, their address is not correct. but the information is already saved. So if you want the backend to replace all of your saved information with a new information, that is, you need to make a put request. Now, a request that requires the backend to replace all of your information with a new information. All right. I don't know why it's actually doing like this. That I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can hear me, please drop a thumb up so that I know that you hear me. Okay. Can you hear me? Drop it up so that I know you can hear. You can't see this, but that's fine. I think we're back and good to go. Okay. You still can't hear me. Okay. All right. All right. Good. Let me confirm. Okay. So I was explaining a put request and a patch request. Now, a put request is the type of request that is made asking the backend to replace all of your information with a new information. That's a put request. And whereas a patch request is a kind of request that is asking that you change or you edit a part of my information, not all of them, but just a part of it. For example, MTN was asking that we link our NIN to our mobile numbers. So we know that we've actually we've done the registrations before, but the registrations does not include our NIN. In order to include the NIN, you need to make a patch request. So a patch request is you are editing or you are adding just not all of the information, but part of the information. It's more like clothes. If you want to, a put request is like throwing away the whole clothes and buying a new cloth. Or a patch request is like the cloth is torn, you don't want to throw away the cloth, but you just patch that part that is bad. That's a patch request. And a delete request is a type of request that is made asking the backend to delete a certain information from the database. That's a delete request. So these are the type of requests you will be building for the front-end developers to make. They'll be making different kind of requests. Now let's make one request of our own. One way to start making a request is this. First, I'll comment this out. So I'll start with const. What's the function? The function is going to be called make request. Because make request is equal to fetch. Now fetch, I'm not going through this from anywhere. I want you to be able to see it from this website because you might be making requests of your own here. So we're making a fetch request. Now there are so many ways to make fetch request, but this is the easiest way. You need to enter the URL address of where you are making that request to. So I'll enter the URL address here. And the next thing I want to do is insert the endpoint, which is to-dos. For now, you don't know what endpoint is, but you'll be building different endpoints. But we want to just see how to make our own request. So if this goes through, you know what? I think I want to use what do I do? I'll put it inside a function. I'll put it inside a function, which is going to be an arrow function. Put it inside a function. And then say .then take the response. Take the response. And I need to explain what I'm doing, but just give me a minute. Response.json, converting it to JavaScript object. And then take the object and console log it. Then take the response and console log it. Console log res. And then save this. So what I'm trying to do is make a request to the backend and then requesting it to give me a list of to-dos. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to put it inside a function here so that whenever I call this function, it's going to make a request. And of course, it has made a request to the backend and I have data and it's returning 200 data. So here I have from 0 to 99 and all of these data are coming from the back end. They are all coming from the back end. Now, this is one way to do it. There is another way to do it. So this is one way to do it. The first thing we're doing is there's something called asynchronous operation and JavaScript promises. promises. So what is asynchronous operations and what is JavaScript promises? Now, when you are making a request to somebody, for example, you send a robot to go to an office. When you send a robot to go to an office, you know that one way or another, that robot must come back to you. It is going to come back with a message. The message will be either it was fulfilled or it failed. That is an example of JavaScript promises. So when you make a request to a backend or to anywhere, you need to wait. Now, listen, this request I've made is going to come back with a response. That response that is coming back is what we refer to as JavaScript promises, because there is no way you send a message and you are not expecting feedback. You must get feedback. Whether the feedback is in your favor or is not in your favor, you must get feedback. That is why here, when I make a response, this is the first thing I did. The first thing I did is to make a fetch request. Now, a fetch request is like a native JavaScript GET request. So when I put fetch, without stating the type of request, JavaScript automatically knows that I am making a GET request. And a GET request is a kind of request that I am asking the backend to send me information. That is what the GET request is. So just putting fetch here without stating the type of request, it means that I want to make a GET request. Now, if you put fetch, now you put in the URL of the backend. This is the URL of the backend, http jsonplaceholder.typicode.com. This is the URL of that backend. And the information we want to get needs to come from an endpoint. So there is an API that is responsible for to-dos. And that is why we are picking to-dos here. If you come back to this website, you will see that it has for posts, it has for comment, it has for album, it has endpoint for photos, an endpoint for to-dos, an endpoint for users. You can't see my screen. Are you serious? Let me stop sharing and share again and see if that's not going to cause an issue. So I'll stop sharing and I'll share again. So let me know if you can see it now. Let me know if you can see my. Can you see my screen now? Oh. All right. So I was trying to explain that there are so many endpoints to make requests here. And we're making requests to this to-do that has 200 to-dos here. So we're making / to-dos. And you can also make to users, which you would do users, album, comments, and posts. So here we make a fetch request to the URL of that backend, and then we attach the endpoint that we want. Now, when we make this request, we know that it must come back with a JavaScript promise. It must come back. So it doesn't end there. That is not the end. Then to handle that promise, we say .then. So this .then is simply saying, when you make this request and the request comes back, take that response, which is the JavaScript response or the promise, and then convert it using an arrow function. Now, this is an arrow function. The .then here is actually a method that we can call on JavaScript promises. And this is kind of heavy lifting, but don't worry about it. The .then here means if you do the first step, then do the second test, then do the third test. So the 3 steps here are make the request, then take the response, convert it to JavaScript object, then take the object and then console log the object. That is what we are doing in 3 steps. So we are making a request to a backend, and then when we make that request, we know that a response will be sent back. Whether it's fulfilled, whether it failed, that's not our issue. Our response is to make sure that we are ready to accept whatever feedback we get from the back end. And we're doing that in 3 steps inside a function. So we say make the request to todos, get it todos, and then take the response. This response.json here means we are converting it from JSON to object. That is what this response.json means. We're converting that response that is returned from response.json to object. And then take that object, which is, you can call it object if you want. Call it object and then console log the object however you want. So these names here are just variable names. So this one is a variable name. I choose to call it response. This is a variable name. I choose to call it object. And then I'm console logging the object like that. So these are 3 steps on how to make a response to a backend. And if I go to my console, I will see that I have 200 to-dos. Now that may not be the end. I might choose to output this data the same way we did here. I might choose to output this data inside or maybe on the browser here. So what I can do is open up this, and I know that each object has completed, has an ID, has a title, and has a user ID. Please, if you're dropping any information, it should be with on this group so that I understand where we're going to. So what I want to do is call for each. And then I will say take the object. You know what? I'll do it inside here. I'll not do it outside. I'll do it inside here. I'll say take the object, call for each on the object, which will be each and the index. So take the object. Why am I having array? Object array. So let's see. It's actually called, yeah. So I don't need to put object array of objects here. So it's just the object, or you know what? I can call it arrays. So take it, and I want to be sure that you are not dropping a message somewhere else, please, so that I can follow. So we want to output that data we got somewhere else, and I have this URL here. So what I will do is I will bring in this URL, copy this URL, put it inside here, and then call .innerHTML. So innerHTML will be equal to plus equals, let's use a div this time. We want to put it everything inside a div, and then maybe wrap the whole div with something else. So I'll put a div here, Inside this div, I want to display the title, the ID, the user ID, and the completed. So the first thing I want to do is use H3. I'll use H3 here and display the ID. So I will call it each.id. So that's for H3. Next one will be let me go for H4. Let's use let me use H4 here. H4, I want to display the completed. Then the last one will be paragraph. I'll use a P tag here and display the title here. So this should work. Now we're fetching the data. When we fetch the data, we'll take it from JSON and then convert it back to an object that we can use or something we can use. And then we take that array. You know what? I want to call it rest so that it makes sense. So take that response and then map through them using for each. Take each one, and then we are bringing in this UL that is already there, and we are adding HTML inside the UL. The HTML we are adding for each one, create a div, display the ID, the completed, and the title for each one of them. And that is why we have this here. So we have them all displayed here. It's not looking fine, but we can actually style it up a little. Like we can take it a step further. And the first way we can do that is actually calling this class, giving it a CSS. So first thing first is to display grid. If I want to display grid template column, toward F arrow and all of that, but we're going to come to that later. So before we get there, do we have any question? Now, this is like one major thing we've done, and this might be the last time we might do it if you understand it, but if you don't, we might try it again later. But do you have any question on this before we call it a day? Any question? Okay. Wisdom. How do I explain this again? Like, where do I start from? Which part? All of them from the beginning. Okay, this part, we've done this thing here for a simpler array. We did it here for a simpler array. And we said that here, if we have an array here, let me comment this one out first. We have a simple array here of strings. And we are saying we want to select a UL from the DOM, and we want to add each of these items inside this UL. So we are mapping through the whole array here, which is this array, and we call for each on all of them. For each item, we want to call each item each. Then you can call it anything you want, but we're calling it each. For each item here, we're calling it each. So we take each of them. So this one is called each, this one is called each, this one is called each, this one is called each. So we are calling every one of them each. That is what this thing means here. You can call it anything. You can call it like item. And then we are placing item here. And then this I here stands for the index. So what we are doing is this. We are calling .innerHTML, meaning we are inserting HTML inside the UL. So .innerHTML means we are inserting HTML inside the UL. Then this plus equals means we are adding to it. So we keep adding and adding and adding and adding. Now what are we adding? We are adding an li. Every single time we are adding an li. So for each of them, we create an li and add that item inside the li and insert it into the UL. That is what we are doing. So if I save this and come back here, you see that each one of them is an li. Each one of them is an li, and they are coming from this array. So if I try to add another name here like wisdom and save it, you see that wisdom is appearing here now. So what we are doing is we are taking an array and then we are inserting the items in this array into a UL using li. That is what we are doing here. Now, if you come back to our function, this side, let me comment these ones out. If you come back to our function here we are doing something similar, but this time we are not hard coding the array. We are not. Rather, I will comment this one out first. Rather, we make a request to a backend to send us a list of to-dos. We make a request to a backend to send us a list of to-dos. So if it sends us that to-dos, we are going to have a list. Now we take that list, which is why we call .then. We take that list and then call .json on it. Now .json, we convert it from JSON to something we can use in JavaScript, because we can't use JSON in JavaScript. And I told you before that the format with which we send and receive data from the front end to the back end, we send it in the format of JSON. So we send JSON back and forth, and then we're converting it back to JavaScript object that we can use. And that is why we are calling .json on the response that is gotten back. This response is a response we get back when we make this request. So when we get it, we then again take that response. Now this res here is the JSON object that has been converted to an object. So now it is now an object. This is what we call the object, the res. You can call it anything. So if I decide to console log it, console log the res here and save it. So if I open my console, you see that in the console, I have an array of 200 items, 200 items. Now, JSON placeholder says the to-dos are total of 200 to-dos, and we are making a request to the endpoint to-dos. So if I come back here, I have an array of 200 items. Now, if I open them, each item is an object. Each item is an object that has completed first, the ID 1, the title this, and the user ID this. Now this information, we are not hard coding it. It's coming from a back end. It's coming from a back end, and we've been able to fetch it, convert it to an object, and here we are console logging it. So what we want to do is using this idea that we use there to display items of the browser. We want to use that idea here. So we call the object that has been converted, which is now an array, this array of 200 items, we call it, and we say for each item, so let's change this to item then. For each item, meaning these are each item. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so for each item, we have item.completed, item.id, item.title, and item.user ID. So what we are doing is creating a div. Now, instead of inserting just li, we are now inserting a complete div that has h3, h4, and a p tag. Now, inside the h3, we have item.id, we have item.completed, we have the item.title. And then if we save this and come back to the browser, we have the item.id, item.completed, and item.paragraph. Now, you can add something like HR here. Horizontal rule to tell us the difference in all of them. So you see what we're actually doing is we are fetching 200 items. When we fetch the 200 items, then we map through, we loop through each one of them, create a div, h3, h4, and p tag, and a horizontal row, and insert it inside the UL. That is what we are doing here. So I want to believe this is a little bit clearer. Now, if you don't understand this, just guess what the front-end developer is going to face. Now, this is very easy for us because the back-end developers, we are able to structure their data. Here, now we know that all of these things are coming as an array, and each one has an object inside it, and the keys are all the same. So inside there, you also have the same number of keys. Inside there, you also have the same number of keys. Inside there, you also have the same number of keys, like that. And that is why we can create a div for each one, add them, and add put them into this UL. Now, it doesn't have to be UL. It can actually be a div if you want. It can actually be a div. And this tag can be any tag you want to use. It mustn't be you must use H3 or H4 or P tag. No, it can be any tag you want to use. So I want to believe that's a little better explanation. And we like to call it maybe a day and then continue tomorrow, but I want to be sure that you understand this. Any question on this? Now, this I here stands for the index. The index of each item. Now, it's not compulsory, but sometimes you may not have IDs and you may want to display their index. So here now, you see that the ID go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 because they all came with IDs. But in a situation where they don't come with IDs, you may want to display their index instead as the counting, display their index. So if I remove this one and display their index, you see that it is now counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And to actually do that, I can say index plus 1. So that it starts counting from 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it depends on what you want. Sometimes you don't need the index, sometimes you need the index. I just wanted to show you what is possible. This is the last part. Although I'm going to, you know what, let me just share these codes with you. I'll go to GitHub and just so that you have the codes immediately. I'll call this DOM and this public and create. So I'll come here, open this. I say git init git add dot. Where's the commit? Git commit. Yeah, this one. Then git push. All right, so I want to believe the codes, they'll be all in here and you can have access to them. Wisdom, I don't know the part you are, but that arrow function, is it not this arrow function you're showing us? This is the arrow function here. This part, or is it this part you mean, or is it this part? And this is the entire function that is running the fetch request, converting it, and then displaying it on the browser like that. All right, so any more questions before we call it a day? All right, so I'll see you again tomorrow. But if you are okay so that we end the class, drop a thumbs up so I know that it's okay to end the class here. And I'll see you again tomorrow at 5 p.m. So, but like I was saying, if you weren't taking it serious before, please, this is the time to take it serious. I get a lot of messages that I want to join. It doesn't come twice. I don't know if it's going to come twice, but it hardly comes twice. It hardly, because there's a lot of procedures to follow. And I'm sure some of you that are actually here, you had to wait for months before the class actually started. So it's difficult to just join class immediately. It's very difficult. So, but hopefully, I think we're done with the basics of JavaScript. And we're moving on to back end proper. But that would mean that you have actually submitted my 2 last assignments. So I'm going to give you 2 assignments together, but that will be after tomorrow's class then. So see you guys tomorrow, 5 p.m. Bye.